What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Laying the Points, the contest show, the week 6 contest show where we talk about Survivor, ATS contests, as well as some other aspects of my strategy. We have a great guest today. Kate Constable comes on the show to talk about WNBA, NFL, a little NBA and her Chicago Bulls, and gives out a free prop bet for week 6 as well. So look forward to that. Towards the end of this podcast, I will also preview the Thursday night matchup between the Eagles and the Giants. You can follow me at Farley Bets on X. You can get all my plays on Substack at farleybets.substack.com. Look forward, as always, to the Friday show where we detail, analyze, and give out leans on every single NFL contest this weekend for week 6. Let's get right into it here because we have a tight show. Great guest spot from Kate. Just had her on. It was amazing. So just look forward to that because she's everywhere. That gal. She's everywhere, and she has a lot of great information. For Survivor this week, I want to look back on Survivor last week because boy, oh boy, was it momentous. Right? You talk about on Thursday night, the Rams. The most picked team last week was the Rams. I lost one of my Circa Survivor entries on the Rams as well, but I have 3 and we kept 2. I'll get to that in a second. And then, of course, the Cardinals and what might be, and what I'm hearing from many professionals who talk about contests, who are in contests, who win contests on a consistent basis, that the Cardinals were perhaps the worst beat they've ever seen in NFL Survivor, which I can laugh because I didn't have the Cardinals in Circa Survivor, but that's brutal. Just absolutely brutal. But the Rams and Cardinals were the number 1 and number 2 pick teams. Over 7,000 participants in Circa Survivor are gone just because of those 2 selections. And then, of course, the Chiefs and the Bills also lose on Sunday and Monday night, eliminating quite a few more, not nearly as much as the Rams and the Cardinals, but a week where everybody was kind of scratching their heads about these results. Which reminds me of a principle contest approach that I always try to have when it comes to Survivor. And that is, now again, easy for me to say, right? Because I survived and I did not pick the Cardinals, which is the only other team that I might have picked that lost other than the Rams, which I did pick. But it's more about avoiding upsets than it is choosing winners. Again, obviously, you have to map out and know when certain teams in certain weeks are going to thrive, right? Like just for an example, the Colts in week 8. Let me bring it up, the exact matchup. But the Colts in week 8 qualify as in just an absolutely exceptional matchup. They're at home against the Titans. We know the Titans aren't a very good team. The Titans were very fortunate to beat the Cardinals, and we'll get to that in a second in week 5. But that is a plus matchup, a comfy spot for a Colts team in week 8 that looks like it could very well be a juggernaut at home. Now, when I say avoiding upsets, right? And hopefully you don't hear my insane German Shepherd who's now barking at probably a squirrel outside, which is what he does. My German Shepherd has thought for 7 years of his existence that he was going to catch every squirrel he's ever seen. He is 0 for 1,000, and he keeps going. So good luck, bro. You got to save teams for certain weeks of the season, right? But avoiding upsets or exacting, like pinpointing where an upset could happen is such an important thing. And in every one of the picks that lost last weekend, there was some evidence, at least some evidence to suggest that they were not a good selection if you were approaching it that way. Let's look at the Rams. Historically, Shanahan has dominated Sean McVay, something like 11-6 in the regular season against the Rams. It's obviously an AFC West rivalry. It is the biggest AFC West rivalry right now because the Rams and the 49ers have been the best teams in the NFC West, NFC West for years and years at this point, right? Years and years. So just knowing that San Francisco, regardless of how banged up they were, that they had an edge or Shanahan had an edge against McVay in some way leading into that matchup. And of course, everybody was also responding to the fact that all week you're seeing the line on the 49ers go up and up and up. Like they were, it came out as they were plus 4.5, I believe. It went up to 8.5, I think 9.5 at some sports books, putting 49ers as an underdog on the road for good reason, right? Their defense, the receivers, everybody's banged up. But to consider that Mac Jones looked good in previous starts for the 49ers, he kept the ship afloat, and that this was a NFC West divisional rivalry, a very heated one, where the 49ers had success in the past, was reason enough to not pick the Rams. And I should have known that too. And I still picked the Rams because with the line movement and the home field and how well the Rams have played, it seemed like a very obvious pick. The Rams also haven't come out sleepy or dry or flat in any week of the season. So you would think at home against their rival, they would come out really crisp, and they didn't. I thought they started really sleepy. It was like 14-0 before you knew it, right? 49ers in the lead. Now the Rams still almost came back. Crazy things happened. Probably still should have won that game. But as far as like a net measurement of a possible upset, it was still there because of what we know about the 49ers and their success against the Rams. The Cardinals are more of a you can't trust them ever. And last week was an example, I would say, where you might want to pick the Cardinals because the Cardinals are, in general, a good team, a winning team against bad programs, and a bad team against good programs, right? A loser against the elite. So that qualified at home after a loss with 10 days of rest. You would think you can trust the Arizona Cardinals. But in general, like I have the Cardinals circled in my power ratings, in my notes, as just a team where you can tell the way they operate, their lack of leadership on the field, their pedestrian results, especially on offense, but even defensively, they can capitulate in some big moments. It's a team that you just inherently can't trust. And I can't trust Kyler Murray at all. I've never been able to. And he's had some unbelievable stats. Last year, they started off very hot, looked like they were going to win the NFC West and be like a top seed in the NFC playoffs. And then it all kind of foiled, right? And that's what happens to the Cardinals every season under Kyler Murray. So again, historical evidence that the Cardinals are a team that can blow it in big spots, and they sure did. And obviously, DeMarcado with that fumble on the goal line and just all the folly that happened afterwards to create a Titans win is the bigger thing that happened. That's really what happened. It's not that the Cardinals were necessarily a bad pick, but still, if we look back, is it hindsight, right? Is 2020, 50-50. What the hell am I saying on this show? Hindsight is 2020. It's easy to look back, right, and be like, hey, you shouldn't have picked the Cardinals. I'm not trying to be that guy. But the Cardinals are that type of team, right, who just blows it. And we've seen it plenty of times before. The Bills and the Chiefs are a little bit harder. The Bills, like there are a lot of spots to take the Bills this season against bad teams. The Patriots are not a bad team. That was obvious. I thought the Bills would cover -7.5 at home against the Patriots. So I didn't think there was a great chance that this could happen. But again, our AFC East rivalry between two teams that just absolutely hate each other, between a Patriots team that wanted to prove itself, and the Bills really haven't played that well. I mean, you look at, sure, the box score and the yardage and everything and what Josh Allen does on a week-to-week basis is impressive, but defensively, they're bad against the run. They're not getting to the quarterback enough at all. They haven't been a good pass rushing team, and they're letting other teams hang around. The Saints in week 4 could have won that game at Buffalo. So it was kind of bound to happen with Buffalo at a certain point. Turns out it happened in week 5 against a Patriots team that's on the up and up. As far as the Chiefs go, the Chiefs had yet to prove that they can beat a really good defense. They beat the Giants and they beat the Ravens. And the Giants are the Giants. They actually played pretty well defensively for the most part, but it's not enough. It's not good enough. And then we know the story about the Ravens and their lack of defense. The Ravens are one of the worst defenses in the NFL to this point, and especially how injured they were heading into that matchup. So the Chiefs were on the road against a Jacksonville defense that showed a lot, turns the ball over, makes big plays. And you know what? It's not all in the stats. right? Like if you looked at team rankings, you're like, oh, the Jags are not an elite defense in every way. That's true. There's enough stats to believe that they're a good defense, but they're not great in every way. But there was enough evidence to suggest that was going to be a difficult spot. After the Jags beat the 49ers coming back home, kind of felt like you could say that's a letdown spot, but against the Chiefs, there's no letdown spot against the Chiefs. The Chiefs are the Chiefs. Everyone wants to be the Chiefs. So there's evidence in every one of those matchups of potential upsets happening. So avoiding those upsets is key. This week, let me touch on a few teams that I would consider, and then we'll get to a quick Thursday night football prediction. Green Bay is obvious. They're coming off a bye, and they're at home, and they've played their best football at home. Joe Flacco, starting for the Bengals, certainly adds a wrinkle dinkle. But they're still the best team to play in week 6, and Joe Flacco is not, like a top tier quarterback. He's just a little more stable, a little bit more of a professional. He's going to air the ball out to Jamar Chase, but it's not like Joe Flacco really moves the needle. The Chargers, I think, are a great pick. I know they're very injured, but Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins are falling very quick. There is no evidence, there is no suggestive elements at all that the Miami Dolphins are going to recover and become a great team this season. Their defense looks really bad, like 90% of the time, except for in that second half against the Bills. Tua doesn't look the same. Tyreek Hill is out of the game. And Jim Harbaugh, whether you like him or not, is a great coach. And the Chargers didn't lose back-to-back games all last season. Now they just did. They're going to lose 3 in a row? I don't think so. To quote Kevin McAllister in Home Alone, I don't think so. I think the Chargers win that one. The Broncos, obviously, I know they're on the road, and this is a letdown spot coming off of a big win against the Eagles, but the Jets are a dumpster fire. The Rams, again, I think John Harbaugh is a dumpster fire at this point. There's just no change in the performance or the effort of the Ravens. Even with all the injuries, I know it's an easy excuse, but if you're a Super Bowl winning coach and a league coach in this league, you have to fire up your team to come out and play hard and change things schematically to put them at an advantage. There's nothing happening in those departments, nothing. The Colts I would avoid. The Cardinals now coming off that loss. It's just a weird spot. And I'll just say the Cowboys and the Eagles are interesting. They wouldn't be my top picks, but they're interesting. I'm going to talk about Circa Millions and ATS contests in the future, but for now I'm going to stay away because lately I have been a horrible. So I'm not the guy to ask until I rediscover my form, so to speak. Lastly, and very quickly, let's talk about Thursday night football. Jackson Dart has been running. He seems a little bit like Caleb Williams, right? Like he's not at the point yet where he's comfortable enough to trust his eyes down the field. And when he's looking down the field, I'm sure he probably doesn't like what he sees because there's no more Malik Neighbors. And so he's pulling down the ball and he's running a lot. And Daboll and the Giants are designing plays where he can run a lot. If you look at his rushing yards since he became their starter, in 2 games, 54 and 55 yards, the Eagles have a crazy pass rush. His prop is set at 37.5 from what I'm seeing in most books. I would consider the over there. He's going to be running for his life. This is a game the Giants really care about. He's a good energy guy. Like he takes accountability, right? So I think he's going to take off with the ball a lot. That's a prop I like. I like Jalen Hurts to score a touchdown too. Jalen Hurts, his best quality is his leadership and how stoic he is. And he said, "It's on me. Week 5 and our first loss of the season, that's on me." I would expect the passing game to look a lot better, but there's probably a tush push or Jalen Hurts running it in and, slamming the ball down and looking like a monster out there. So I like Jalen Hurts, and I would have to lean to the Eagles. I know it's 7.5. Like historically, as a pro bettor, if you get a home underdog in the same division at 7.5 over 3 key numbers, you got to take the home underdog, right? And it's my Giants. I want to take the home underdog. So as a professional bettor, that's naturally where you lean. But the Eagles have been historically so dominant against the Giants. Every win for the last 3 years, they've won 5 out of 6 games the last 3 years, except for in 2023 where things were going really weird. But they dominate this team, and the Giants are still not a good team. They're not getting to the quarterback enough despite their excellent front seven. And the Giants' offense with Jackson Dart and without Malik Nabers is still going to sputter. And we still haven't seen Jackson Dart throw accurately down the field over and over again in a game. I expect turnovers from the Giants and something like a 31-14, 28-17 type of win for the Eagles. With that, up next is the Friday show where we go over every single game over the weekend in week 6. We give out all of our leans. Check me out at Substack. Substack is farleybets.substack.com. And my Twitter handle, I got to call Twitter still, sorry, is @FarleyBets. And I'll see y'all on Friday. Let's win some damn money, shall we?